Hello ladies and gentlemen, it's Mike here at Game From Scratch, and if you followed this channel for a while, you probably already know that I don't really recommend that beginners start with C or C++. I've got a plethora of reasons for that. I've done another video on the topic, so I'm not going to retread it. However, I am going to say if you want to start with C or C++, pick up Raylib. No questions asked, this is the single best game framework for beginners using C or C++. Basically C, but you can also use C++ to work with it. So what exactly is Raylib and why the heck are we talking about it? Well, we'll start with the second thing first. We're talking about it because Raylib 2.5 was just released the end of last week. So we're going to get into the Raylib 2.5 in just a few moments, but first I'm going to sing the praises of Raylib for a while here, and then we'll get into the new details. So first off, Raylib, what is it? Well, it is a free framework for making games, obviously written in C. You will see it is available at Raylib.com. It started life in 2013, I believe. The entire purpose behind Raylib was to create a code easy-to-use system for non-programmers. So this was a guy that was working with artists in teaching capacity, and he wanted to give them a framework that they could understand, and Raylib evolved from that. The inspirations are the old school Borland BGI graphics library and the XNA framework, which was absolutely excellent. The cool thing about Raylib is it supports every platform out there. It was one of the definite joys of using C. So you've got Windows, Linux, Mac, Debian? FreeBSD, sorry about that, Raspberry Pi, Android, and HTML5. And we got programming language bindings for C#, whatever you are, Go, Python, Ruby, Java, using the Eclipse logo, Lua, my bad, Rust, Odin, and more. We've got a number of different communities for getting support, but the big thing is let's get into the features. There are no external dependencies. This is wicked, so you don't have to get into, and this is an area where new developers often fall on their face. So let's say we got to build your code. That means, okay, well, I have a dependency on SDL, so go download SDL, and you've got to go download libzpeg or libzlib, or so on and so forth. So then you got to start resolving all of these different libraries and getting them before you can even get started. This guy has no external dependencies. Everything you need is already included. It's multi-platform, as we already talked about. It's written in plain C, hardware accelerated using OpenGL, unique OpenGL abstraction layer, RLGL, that you can actually use on your own. There's font support built in, full 3D support built in, including 3D shapes, models, billboard, height maps, and more. Outstanding texture format support, did that out of order just to confuse you guys. Flexible material system, including classic maps and PBR, or physically based rendering maps. Animated 3D model support, including skeletal bones and animation. Shader support, including models, shaders, and post-processing shaders. We've got powerful math module for vector matrix quaternions and via the RayMath library. We've got auto loading and playing with streaming support of WAV, OGG, MP3, FLAC, XM, and mod files. VR stereo rendering support with configurable HMD device parameters or head-mounted display, if that acronym is new to you. And a huge example collection with 95 plus code examples, which is actually really cool. Bindings for 25 other programming languages, and it is free and open source. We'll get back to that in just a second. Here you can see how it is architected, so you can actually use what you need and the components you need only. So you've got these abstraction layers. So they've got their math library here. They've got their audio library, which is completely standalone. You could use that as your own audio library if you so wished. You've got your GL abstraction layer and shaders there. And then you've got the windowing library that's used for it. And then you've got core, texture, text, shapes, and models, all as their own particular libraries as well. And then you see the actual dependencies that those guys have. And those dependencies are all already included in the project, so you don't need to worry about resolving them. So that is kind of the gist of it. Now, the cool thing and why Raylib really shines is here's all you need to know to use it. This is the cheat sheet that basically shows you all of the functions in Raylib and a quick comment on how they work. And to be honest, this is really all the documentation you really need. Now, of course, you're going to need to know the language itself, but this is it. And that is pretty awesome. Just a breakdown of the different modules, the functions in them. The naming conventions are straightforward enough. The usage is straightforward enough, and that really all you need is these simple comments to understand. For example, if you're going to set the contrast, you've got your range of values that you can pass in as this floating point value here. That is all you need for documentation, although there are like a huge number of examples here to also get you started. So this is really kind of cool. It's a one-page, well, well, if you print it, it's probably about 13 pages. But it's this one side reference to everything you need to know to use Raylib. And that's one of the really big appeals to it. Plus, all of your information is here in one spot. The only thing I wish that they would fix, and this is a very minor gripe, I wish this box didn't scroll, because it's the only one that does. Otherwise, you can just print this sucker out and you have everything there in one place, which is very cool. Now, I mentioned earlier on that this is a completely open source library. You'll see here it is available on GitHub. It's on github.com/rayson5/Raylib. I will also make all these links available in the linked document down below. In terms of code license, the license is released under an unmodified zlib libping license, which is a very, very liberal, straightforward license, but there is a bit of a catch. It's supplied with some stuff that is under different licenses. So, for example, the fonts are free to use and have been designed by actually... that's not really a license, but it's not really a restrictive one. But you see some of the assets here are available. So the 3D models that ship with it, for example, are under the attribution non-commercial license. And the sprites that come with it as demos are under the attribution non-commercial license as well. But for the most part, the entirety of it is under the zlib libping license, which is, like I said, very liberal in what you can do with it. And now we're going to get down to what is new in Raylib 2.5. Now, this has been about a year since the major release, so there was a bit of a bump in the version number. And in terms of new features and functionality, the highlight stuff, so there's a bunch of features that are smaller stuff that isn't going to be covered here. But we've got new Windows management and file system functions to query, monitor information, deal with clipboard, check the directory info, and even launch a URL using the system's default web browser, and experimental high DPI support, which is nice for people like me that run on a 4K monitor. Redesigned gamepad mechanism, now generic for all platforms and gamepads, no more specific gamepad configurations. Redesigned UWP input system, the RLGL, that's that GL abstraction layer. Module has been redesigned to support a unique buffer for shapes, drawing, batching, including lines, triangles, quads in the same index buffer. Also added support for multi-buffering if required. Additionally, RL push matrix, RL pop matrix functionality has been reviewed to behave exactly like OpenGL 1.1. We've got VR Simulator has been reviewed to allow custom configuration of head-mounted display parameters and distortion shader. Support for Unicode text drawing now processes UTF-8 strings on drawing, supporting Unicode code points, allowing rendering almost any existing language. And a new example to showcase that. Brand new text management API with the addition of multiple functions to deal with string data, including functionality like replace, insert, join, split, append to uppercase to lower, etc. And that is actually a really big and important thing for a new person starting out, because one of the areas where you immediately run into a wall when working with C or C++ is when you start getting into string handling. I actually have long said that if C came with a built-in good string object, we probably wouldn't have a lot of the programming languages we do these days. So that's just the point of frustration that causes people to branch out and start writing their own languages, it seems. So anyways, that is definitely a nice improvement. Multiple new shapes and textures drawing functions, including draw ring lines, draw circle sector lines, draw rectangle rounded lines, also an end patch textures, draw texture end patch function. Experimental cube map support was added, and skeletal animation support for 3D models. This addition implied a redesign of the model data structure to accommodate multiple mesh, multiple material support, and bone information. Multiple model functions have also been reviewed and added on this process. Also, GLTF model loading support has been added. Now, GLTF is the kind of open source file format for 3D models. Hopefully, it is the one that wins in the future. And then there's 70 new functions have been added overall, 30 new examples have been added, and that topic of examples, let's flip on back to the Raylib thing, and I will showcase that before we finish up. So you come in here, you can see the examples that are done, and the nice thing about Raylib is actually you can compile it for the web, so the examples actually all run in the browser. But you see you have an absolute ton of them showcasing the features and functionalities of Raylib, and you can run them at your whim. And then the cool thing is you can actually also see the source code behind them. And you'll see Raylib programs are pretty short, pretty simple. Again, it's something that I like about this framework or library. But you can see there are an absolute ton of examples. We start getting into the sprite stuff here and get down a little bit more, and then we're going to start getting into the 3D stuff and some physics stuff. So it's an amazing, we even got a ray marching example. I don't know if that does anything though. All right. So that is that. That is Raylib 2.5. As I mentioned earlier off the start, if you want to work in C or C++ and you are just beginning, definitely check out Raylib. Now, I've actually thought about doing, a one and done tutorial on this. Like, here's how you get up and started and create a very simple game. And I've never done it because, frankly, there's just such great examples and documentation here, and otherwise, it is easy to use. And on top of that, they've even got kind of getting started guides for all the various different languages or tools that you might want to start with. So if you're using, say, Visual C++, if you go to the wiki, you will find that there are instructions on getting started using the various different operating systems. And then you've got instructions on getting started with the various different editors. So Visual Studio, Code Blocks, Visual Studio Code, Eclipse. And then they've got, more advanced guides on using certain libraries or how to use their library standalone and so on. And these are actually pretty comprehensive. They actually walk you through it. So for example, here in Visual Studio, if you've got Visual Studio 2017 installed, there's a template, and then it's just like 7 steps to get up and going, including building your project. So I haven't really bothered doing a tutorial because I don't really think it's needed, but I'd be interested in hearing from you guys what you'd like. Have you used Raylib? Are there any tricky areas that you've run into, and would you like to see such a tutorial? Because again, I love Raylib. I think it's a great project. I think it's really beginner friendly and while still being useful. And if you are going to start with C or C++, I again do highly recommend it. But the problem is, since it is so easy and good to get started with, I don't really see a lot of use in me doing a tutorial on it. But I'd love to hear from you guys. First off, if you've used Raylib, and second, what you think about a tutorial on it. And I will talk to you all later. Goodbye.